Hey, homeschool moms, I hope you can stop and have a little tea or coffee break with us. I'm here to chat with Kelly from 90 Minute School Day, and we're going to chat about all things deschooling, neurodivergence, all the things that have been going on, the things we're learning through our podcasting, and also how we're coaching and engaging women, you, in the homeschool mom space. If you have thoughts or questions that you'd like to ask or discuss, you're welcome to put in the comments below and we'll have a conversation. And if you haven't met me, I'm Teresa. I'm the certified life coach and homeschool mentor, found here at Homeschool Mama Self-Care and on my website, Capturing the Charmed Life. So it's a pleasure to meet you. Let's see if I can't say hello. Homeschool
Hey, Teresa.
out. Hi, homeschool's out. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much.
You always say on your podcast,
Yes.
school's out.
Yeah, school is out.
School's out.
Natural learning is in. That's one of my taglines. So I'm so glad to be here with you. It's good to see you.
I'm glad you're here too. And to everybody, homeschool's out. Join us for
Yeah.
tea.
Oh, sorry, I'm drinking water.
Yeah, herbal tea. I can't do coffee after one. So guess whose podcast episode I was just listening to?
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And guess what? I was getting drawn into it, and then I realized, whoa, wait, it's past one. Oh, the coincidence.
Which episode were you listening to?
Why kids don't like school.
Oh, that's one of my personal favorites. Yeah, I'm really proud of that episode, and I think it's kind of speaks to what we're going to talk about today. Is really like, why are we homeschooling? Why are we considering it? Why are we curious? And then we get into it, and we end up doing our very best, and then it doesn't work.
Do you know
we're wondering what we're doing wrong?
Kelly, I just released a podcast today about breaking free, really deschooling and its connection to life purpose. So it perfectly aligns with our conversation. Perfect.
It sounds like a good combo. Like, listen to both. I think it's episode 10 for me, and then yours. I'll have to listen to it. Looking forward to it.
And also Erin at the Virtual Kitchen Table had a podcast episode about deschooling. So I think it's the season.
It is. Yeah. I tagged Aaron's earlier to listen to. I'm hoping to go for a walk after this and listen to that one. And, I'll just extend my walk. I'll listen to yours too. Cause I do think that as we talk, I know we're going to dig into it, but like deschooling is something that we're continuously doing. I've been homeschooling for 9 years. You've been homeschooling longer, and I'll be deschooling the rest of my life because I live in a schooled society. And, I get questions every day from people who are just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
How does that work?
The longer I speak about it, the longer I engage people about this discussion. Just like you, I'm asked all the time the difference between deschooling and unschooling. And we can definitely outline that if anybody's curious. But also, I think it's not so much just deschooling, it's like deinstitutionalizing. Yeah, it's like so much bigger than that. And of course, probably that's not the purview of our discussion to talk about every institution.
We're already off topic.
we're already also in such a big area, because when I was at this public setting in the last number of months talking about deschooling to a newer homeschool mom, and the people around me were like, what is she talking about?
Yeah. We feel like it's kind of a common term now because it's become more used, but it still is new to a lot of people. And then it means different things to different people. So, maybe we should define terms if we're going to continue to talk about deschooling, because I think, that's so helpful to kind of like frame out the conversation. What is this? Why is this something I should be entertaining? And then how do you do it? But I'll let you, roll with whichever direction you want to go.
Every time I actually try to explain what deschooling is, I explain it differently. But I say simply, I literally explained it this morning in my support group. And then I realized I've never said it that way before. So it changes every time too, but I just think it's coming away from schooled mindsets or the conventional educational mindsets. And just like you, I'm a parent of my oldest kiddo. It's almost 23, and I still have moments where I'm like, oh, yes, I should deschool that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an excellent definition, and it's really like deprogramming or
Yes,
deconditioning
programming.
our
Yeah.
our mindsets, and it's shifting it. So it's a paradigm shift, and really, we're all engaged in that in different areas throughout our lives. Like my husband is very big about like getting away from the corporate ladder and just being more of an entrepreneur and encouraging other entrepreneurs. So he could call it like corporating or something. But we always do that, and it's about reframing,
Yeah.
right? Yes, we all understand what school is. We all understand institutionalized education. Everyone understands that. We don't have to define that. But what is homeschooling? And heaven forbid if you talk about something like unschooling or natural learning or self-directed education, and parents are like, what do you mean? My child can't be self-directed. Well, no, because your child is schooled, and so they are expecting to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And so if you just kind of like all of a sudden you're like, hey, go be self-directed, they can't do that. And so you need some scaffolding to transition into this new world, this unknown. And that's one of my biggest like passion points, is to help walk parents. I coach parents. I don't coach kids. I coach parents, and I have a framework and a system that gives that scaffolding for parents who are educating their children in a new, scary way, but they're passionate about it, but they're not also sure how to do it, that makes sense as they continue to deschool themselves.
Yeah.
Along the way.
I see it as a deinstitutionalizing, really. And like my husband also, not entrepreneurial per se, but he's running a political campaign.
Oh, wow.
So, and it is about deinstitutionalizing, or how the system is not really serving the individual person. And that's my experience in every institution. It's never about the person. Like the school isn't about the child, it's about the system.
Right.
And so
it's about the metrics. How can we get more funding? How can we,
who's
better, all
best? Yeah. Who's doing it? Yeah. And it's not about your child. Whereas we actually can do that too. We can take our kids home, and then we can go, let's do it just like the school.
Yeah, I did that. I did that for a couple of years.
Yeah, me too. I did too, until I realized it's not working. Nobody's happy, including me.
Right. Yeah. And that's really, I think, where you and I are so aligned, is just how we have such hearts, because we were struggling through these waters without as much guidance as there is now. But it's still about finding someone that you resonate with, that really can speak to your life experiences. And it's like you just said, it's personal and it's individualized. So every parent who's homeschooling needs to find a support network, whether that's a group of other homeschoolers or it's a homeschool coach like me or you. But you need to have that kind of person that's ahead of you on the trail. I love talking about homeschooling as like a hike, and somebody who has hiked the trail before and can help you like avoid, the quicksand, and, no, that trail looks good, but it's the long way, or whatever.
Not coincidentally, you quoted John Holt in your podcast, and I quoted John Holt in my podcast, because he was the reason that I went down this path. Where I did actually unschool, like radically unschool for 6 months. But a book fell in my lap, almost literally. Most of the most influential books in my life have fallen in my lap. And it was in a library. I picked it up. It's old and ratty, by John Holt, called How Children Learn, or no, How Children Fail. And I gotta say, it wasn't exciting. It was hard to keep in there sometimes, but I wanted to see from his perspective as a 30-year veteran school teacher, how he was seeing his kids learn in the classroom. And ultimately, he declared they didn't really learn that well, if at all. And as you said in your podcast, you quoted the quote that I was like, are you kidding me? This is the stuff that I'm highlighting, that it's about how tolerant we are as homeschool parents to allow our kids to move toward child-led learning. And so when I talk about deschooling, I say, lean in to child-led learning, because I know how hard it is to tell yourself, what, no math today?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you're bringing up a really good point, Teresa, which is, he's really encouraging us to do the uncomfortable. And none of us like to do that. Our kids don't want to do uncomfortable things. That's why they probably don't want to do the math assignment. We don't want to have to drop the math assignment because then we're going to be a bad parent or we're going to be a bad educator, or however we want to frame it. But like, let's actually question that. Like,
Yeah.
if we don't do math today, does that mean I'm bad? Is that a moral thing? Or is it just like, hey, today this is not working for my child and it's not working for me. Let me get curious about this, or just drop it, reflect on it later. We can pick up math later in the day, tomorrow, next week. Education is lifelong. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I think we get tunnel vision because of the voices that we've picked up from society, that we think people are looking at everything we do with a microscope, but they are not.
They are not. And I just think
not.
what you just said is like the intersection between deschooling and boundary building in my mind. Because when we get really clear and certain why we're doing what we're doing, then we genuinely don't care what other people think.
Right.
But when I was an advocate, I was working with our provincial advocacy group. We were invited to the province's education hub, for the province, and they wanted to hear our experiences as registered homeschoolers. Like, essentially, there is nobody guiding or overseeing what we're doing. And I learned in that room that I was with all these educational, I forget what they're called, but administrators of some sort. And they were the ones that you would think would be coming to your room or your home to check whether you were actually homeschooling. And when someone was asked, one of them was asked, do you do that? And what's your process for that? They're like, we don't have time for that. So, yeah. I mean, that's it here in British Columbia, Canada. So I can't speak for the rest of the world, nor can I declare that that's confidently the way it is here right now. But realistically, most people aren't caring about what we're doing.
No, and and I think that that's very freeing. Is that to meet governmental standards wherever you are in the world. I'm here in the U.S., you're in Canada. It's good to know what those standards are, but then you have to sit down and you have to do some interpretation, because a lot of times what I found in my coaching practice is parents are overachievers and they are overproducing.
Yeah.
And that's great if that's working for you and your child. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But if this is creating stress in your home, if this is creating friction between you and your child, if this is burning you out, like, let's revisit what actually the region or the board of education or the state or whatever the governing body is. Let's actually look at what they're asking for. And then let's look at what you're giving them. And then let's talk about what feels life-giving to you, and will that still satisfy the requirements? And it does, because at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. The governing body wants your children to be productive, healthy members of society. You want your child to be a productive, healthy member of society. And all of this happens through connection, relationship, and play, being outside, allowing lots of time and space without a lot of your interference. Safety and healthy boundaries. But like, homeschooling is the hard part of homeschooling is in between our ears. It's nothing else. Like, it's up here. Yeah. And that's what I know that you and I are passionate about working with parents. It's just to be like, let's clear this up in here, so that you can feel so successful and confident, and you can enjoy this process with your kids, and you can feel joy yourself. And you're making it hard on yourself because of a preconceived notion that you've adopted somewhere in your past that we need to unpack and explore.
Yes. Yeah. And that was really tricky for me to actually explain what I did for a long time, because I'm not just homeschool mentoring, I'm life coaching. And I see this connection between, if you look back, lots of people will say, I'm not doing good enough, or I'm not doing it well enough, or I feel guilty for various things. There's usually actually a root of something that has nothing to do with homeschooling. It's got something to do with, I don't know, I don't want to say your parents, not a matter.
Limiting beliefs in ourselves that we've picked up somewhere. I was a super high achiever, and I find that a lot of because like attracts like. So I find that a lot of my clients are super high achieving parents who have just kind of done amazing things, and then they start parenting and homeschooling, and they're like, why is this not working?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and and
I was
so
going to ask you if you know any, or if you ever ask Enneagram types when you're first connecting with people,
you
because
know, I should, Teresa, because you and I always talk about
yeah,
the Enneagram, but I don't. But I've just noticed, just like when I learn about their professional background, whether they're continuing in their profession right now or if they've put it on a
hmm,
pause, these are like highly degreed, high functioning, high achievers, highly intelligent, full capacity human beings. And a lot of them are discovering that they're neurodivergent because their children are, I work a lot with neurodivergent families. And so they're getting late diagnosed ADHD. It's, you know, women, and for autistics also get diagnosed late, because women and girls, what they look for is not necessarily what's presenting.
yeah,
And so they're kind of on this path of discovery because they are realizing something with their child. And then as their child gets a diagnosis, they're like, wait a second, I'm seeing a lot of myself here. And there's a lot of unpacking to do, which is empowering and exciting, but then it can also be overwhelming. And then, so we're looking at that. And really what I feel like it is hopeful for the homeschooling parent is when you help yourself, it's in your control,
yeah,
right? Because we feel as parents so often that we can't make our child do whatever the outcome is we're trying to achieve. And so we get frustrated in that. And so it's like, again, it's shifting perspective, saying, instead of making my child do things or setting this up for success for my child to have this particular outcome, you release all
hmm,
that and you actually start working on yourself and looking at these things and why underneath and doing that work. And so it's really, this type of coaching is within your capacity to change. And because you're changing, everything in your home improves and the relationship with your kids improves. And what you're actually looking to attain for your kids is probably dead on the nail, but the way you were doing it was maybe not as productive or as healthy with your kids. And if you shift your approach, then again, you're getting the outcome that you want, which is happy children and deep connection
yeah.
with your children, but you're going about it in a way that feels natural and healthy and fulfilling, rather than trying to fit the square peg in the round hole that society has said, this is the gold standard,
Yes.
whatever, you know?
I
So I
know, because we have this
my
idea, for various reasons, we have these ideas that there is a way to do something, and we should make sure that we can get our kids to do it.
the
And
right
in
way.
the right way, whatever the right way is. My experience with actual children, and various children, some that were doing whatever I wanted them to do, and others that were always doing exactly opposite of what I wanted them to do. You can't make any of them do anything. You can actually, you can force things,
Mm-hmm.
but not only does
And
it
I've
inject
done that. I'm not here to
I,
say that I haven't
of
done
course,
that.
of course, of course. But I see that as losing, whether like it's losing gold, not just in relationship with that child, but maybe sometimes even more so for the child that's compliant, because they will fall in line to whatever the society wants. And it doesn't serve that child over the course of time. They don't listen to themselves. They're not listening to, why am I here on the planet at this time to do this thing right now? And so whether it's the really compliant child or the one that resists, there's going to be conflict, absolutely, with the connection. But I don't know, the bigger existential question is, what is the compelling that we need to have everybody lined up doing the same thing?
Right. And if we got that, I mean, can you think how messed up the world would be?
If I say I think it is sometimes because of that,
Yeah. Well,
that's my
and
honest truth.
and it's just because we kind of today we went to this we're in Florida right now, snowbirding with my parents, and so we were out, we heard about this opportunity. This does relate, I promise. We heard about this opportunity to watch a sea turtle release from a homeschool group that I connected with here. And they sent out a text. I was like, oh, we're
Yeah.
totally doing this. So anyways, but we've never been there before. And so we kind of have a place to go, but then it's like, well, now where do we go? You know, the address has gone away for us and we're looking, and I just decided to follow all the other cars because it's group think, right? So we get out of the car, but I feel a need to confirm that this is correct. So I'm like, are you here to see the turtles? Are you here to see the turtles? Yes, we are. We're hoping we're in the right place. I was like, okay. So that's what happens, right? Is so often because everybody else is doing it the more common way, we just expect that that is the gold standard or the right way, or we're all in agreement that this is the way, but it's not.
Yeah.
And that is really a lot of unpacking to do, and continually unpacking, which that's what deschooling is all about. And if you're leaving the school system for, a reason that the school system is not providing what you want, then recreating the school system at home with school at home is probably not going to work. And I certainly did that. One of my children is, I have got a variety, but I have a very outward facing defiant child. And then I have a very compliant child, and it's the polar opposites. And they're both an unhealthy facet to their personalities that we have to address in our home, as just like trying to help the compliant child to self-advocate, and then the child is doing a great job self-advocating to blend
out of it. Yeah, exactly. Let other people also advocate.
Yeah. Or just hear them out, like they have a point too.
Yep. And interestingly, we're talking about going from the school system into homeschooling, but I've also seen the opposite of kids going into schooling after they've been in a very unschooled environment. And whether it was into a public high school or into a college, they don't think the same. They don't see the world the same. They genuinely are like, well, this doesn't make any sense why they graded that way. And I've watched one of my kiddos in college go to the college professor and say, tell me why, like, what's your rubric here? Help me understand what I can do to improve this, and like make it make sense to me, because I'm not getting randomized grading.
Yeah.
So, moving into the system, you see that they're very independent minded.
Yeah. And I think that that's really healthy. And what homeschooling gives these kids is that they're able to approach their education like some kids approach in college. When I was in college, there was the rare bird that would go up there and talk to the professor. Like, we were all just like, oh, it's over. We'll worry about learning this material right before the test, because that's what you do. And then it's in your short term, then you forget it. And, so what's the point? But yeah. And I've experienced that in our home too. My oldest daughter has had seasons where she's homeschooled, and then where she's in a conventional school setting, and that experience gives you a lot of depth, because you can see like, okay, I like this, but I don't like this, and I'd rather come home. And you have these kind of experiences that I think is individual to the individual, and that's important to entertain too. This homeschool life might be forever, or it might just be for a season for your child, and that's a discussion to have as a family.
It certainly equips them to think independently and do things for their own reasons. I remember when my first daughter, it took her like a solid 2 years to get me to agree to go to public school, and I was like, no, that's not what I do. I write about this, I tell people I love this, and she's like, yeah, I know you love it, but I would really like to see what it's like on this other side. And so anyways, after 2 years, she went to school and then quickly said, I don't want to be here anymore. So she finished it in 2 years, but she was told at the time that she wouldn't have access to certain classes because there was too many people coming into the school system locally. And so then she stood outside the door to that class until that teacher finally said, okay, fine, you can join our class, just be at the back of the class, just be quiet. Anyway, she found a way to get into the class anyway. And that's what I've seen, that kind of energy with independent minded kids, is that they're like, you know what, I'm here on my own terms to learn what I want to learn, and I'm not necessarily fitting in the system because that's the expectation.
Yeah And that's how I was talking to my oldest. She's 15, almost 16, last night, and she and I were talking about math, and she's struggling in understanding math concepts. And so she asked for more resources, and I'm like, okay, like, I'm here to support you in these resources. But if I invest in this, I just want to know that I'm not going to be wasting my money, right? And she's like, no, I really want it. And then she's able to verbalize to me the kind of things she's looking for. And she's like, remember this one curriculum? I really liked the way that taught. Can you find me something that is similar? Yeah. And so, like, there we go. And I think that a homeschooling environment allows our children to understand themselves better, because the socialization question, we're not going to go there, but they're not socialized in a classroom environment to be uncool and not ask questions. Like, they're actually in an environment where they're applauded for asking questions or thinking differently. And so that's important to them for the right reasons, is what I'm trying to say. Is it's just, it's so great. So
I legitimately think that's the most important reason to homeschool, is the socialization element. Yeah.
It truly is. I saw someone who's new to homeschooling in British Columbia. She asked to connect with you later. So I went ahead and put in the comments, yes. And for listening, if you guys have questions for Teresa or myself, we'd be certainly happy to field that conversation. I know that. And we're both available after this for any questions that you have. Didn't get
actually to. I'll have to give you a booking link, because I actually have a Facebook Live in my support group, or in the Facebook support group after this. But absolutely, I'd be happy to chat. I'm curious from your perspective. So you're in Florida right now. Are you touching Disney at all? Do you get to go do all of that?
Yeah, we are up in the Panhandle. My dad calls it Lower Alabama. We're in LA, so we're not as close to Orlando and Disney. It was something we sort of entertained because my youngest hasn't had her trip yet. We take everybody for one trip. But I think we're going to save it for next year, because we're just having some other options that are coming up. Like, there's a water circus coming to town, and there's all these other things. So I think we'll kind of save it for next year. But yeah, this is the second year we've done this, and it's been a really great thing that we can do because we homeschool. And just coming down here, being out of the dreary coldness of West Virginia and being down here has just opened up a lot of novelty and excitement, which really helps my kids. It's a great accommodation for them. My kids are all neurodivergent. They're all adopted, so they have trauma, in their past, just from relocating from their family of origin into my family. And then I have a child that has a whole lot of trauma because she came to us older. So, when we're looking to homeschool, we homeschool for different reasons. But one of the great things that comes out of this is not only do you grow closer as a family and they kind of discover who they are, but you are able to meet them wherever they are in the stage of their journey, because you have that freedom and flexibility that is very frustrating in a systemized environment, whether you're working with a school system or a hospital system. We all know the frustrations of trying to get something done that we know needs to happen, but we are just clouded in bureaucracy and experts that aren't believing us, or they will not hear us. And it just drives me batty. And so I think homeschooling is a great avenue for any family that's up against that. I've done the IEP, the 504 plans, and it still didn't give my child what she needed.
So what would you say? What have you been learning then about momming kids that are neurodivergent or have trauma?
Yeah. That's a big question, Teresa. It's a good question. I've learned a lot. Like, I could have a couple hours to
good. Let's come back.
Yeah.
But tell me, what your first thoughts?
My first thought is believe the parent. So if you're a parent that is struggling because you're trying to figure something out with your kid, and you've tried all the things that everyone has suggested, your friends have suggested, the expert on Instagram has suggested, the doctors have suggested, the psychologists have suggested, the trauma experts have suggested, and it's not working for your kid, like, keep going. Keep looking and trust your gut and trust your kid and believe what is going on in your home. And behavior is an indication. It is a signal to you that there is something else going on. It's that old metaphor of an iceberg, right? The behavior is above water, but what is impacting that behavior is below water. And that's when you really want to find someone who is qualified, and qualifications don't necessarily have like letters behind someone. Qualifications come from living life and being able to move through a difficulty and come out the other side and say, hey, I know exactly what you're dealing with. It may not be the same situation, but it is exactly what I've experienced, and this is what my family did. Maybe we can sit down, have coffee, and brainstorm together on some ideas for you on the path that you're at, because there's nothing more demoralizing than sitting down, trying to help your child and feeling like you've tried it all, and you know there's other things out there, you just don't know what they are,
Yeah.
right? No, and then all of a sudden something will happen. Someone will be like, oh, you know what, I have you ever heard of neurofeedback? And I'll be like, this was me over the summer, and I was like, no, tell me about neurofeedback. And they're like, well, and they're telling me all about this, and it's this
Yeah.
great treatment for
Yeah.
trauma. And I'm like, where has this been all my life?
Yeah.
So, there's keep the faith, believe in yourself. If people don't believe you, then take that as a sign to find someone else.
Yeah.
There's someone else who will believe you. If the school system isn't believing you, if your doctor isn't believing you, if your therapist isn't believing you, and trust. My word for the year is trust. Like, trust yourself and trust your child. If your child is not being successful and they're having a hard time, then believe them and ignore counteracting evidence, because there's nothing worse than putting your child through things that aren't working for them. And I'm talking in trends here, obviously, like not single one-offs. I'm talking like trends.
Yes, Christine, first of all, yes, I do personal coaching. I'm a certified life coach. It's what I do full time now. I remember actually saying, if I was just not homeschooling, then I would be able to do this full time. And now I've got all the full time in the world. Do you do one for personal coaching as well?
I do one-on-one coaching. It's limited because, just like you, I'm running a business and I have limited bandwidth. But I love one-on-one coaching because we can really get granular. I also do, and I think you probably do too, Teresa, I also do group coaching. Group coaching is great because you're in there with other parents, and those parents have a lot of wisdom and solutions from their life experience. So that can be a really cool container. And I host group coaching twice a year. I call it guide training. Again, that hiking.
Great. Yeah.
And I'm just about to ramp up for our spring session that starts in March. And one interesting thing that I offer with that guide training is lifetime membership, in the sense that, hey, in October, when I do this again, you get to come back. You can come back as much as you want, because it's that deschooling concept, right? Whatever it's like marriage counseling. Like, you do premarital counseling and you get all this good advice, but it's not really helpful because you haven't put it into practice yet. And then you come back for a little bit of a little bit of a tune-up after you're married, and all of a sudden you're much more interested because you're like, we're having trouble.
Obviously, what they're talking about
from my own experience. And then you actually get to re-engage with the material, and then you're like, oh, wait a second, I understand it now because I've been practicing this marriage concept. It's the same thing with any kind of coaching, really. But so anyways, that's a little bit about my services. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Actually, that is what I'm gearing up to, is Deschool group coaching. But when you talked about trust as a mother for kids, with trauma or neurodivergence or something, of course it's relevant whether kids have trauma or not. I'm a kid of trauma, by the way, if anybody doesn't know. But that is my experience too. But what I was going to say is that trust angle is also applicable in the homeschool or the home education approach. And I think it was a John Holt that was saying, just like lean into it as much as you can, or as much as you're able to bear. And I think that's perfect. So then we don't have to hold up schooling as the epitome of perfect homeschooling, or of course you might not all think that. So maybe it's Maria Montessori, or maybe it's Charlotte Mason, or maybe it's Waldorf, or all these. We're not holding up these methods as the way to homeschool. Right. We're actually
9 minutes full day. It's just an avenue, just like the other ones.
Yeah, and they're all amazing, by the way. Yeah, I mean they all have amazing things to speak, but that's not my point. My point is that it's about the child, and you want to lean into trusting the process of learning for the child, and the trust word. I think that's a great word for the year. It's a great word for our discussion.
Yeah, thank you. And I love what you're saying about leaning in, because that's something we both use in our coaching. Is when you feel uncomfortable, you need to notice it and tag it somehow. However you can tag it in your brain for later, write it on a note, pull up your note section, send yourself an email or a text and say, this is making me uncomfortable. I'm choosing to revisit this in a moment when I have some reflection. So the next time you go to the bathroom, the next time you're sitting in bed at night, the next time you're up in the middle of the night worrying, like revisit that thing that's bothering you, because that is actually an answer that you need to decode. And if you ignore it and slough it off and avoid it, it will continue to grow and create more avenues for you to explore. And so it can really compound. This is where we get a lot of toxic traits, withheld trauma, because these are things that we're not addressing. And so you can't do things alone. That's why we're all desiring community. That's why we really hone in on people and relationships. Do it with someone, and whoever that someone is determined where you are. But get some help to like unpack this after you've sat with it for a while. If you get stuck, get some help unpacking it, because that is where you break free. That's where you have that freedom and that release, is when you can move through these really tough situations that maybe you can't see your way out of by yourself.
Yeah.
And so get the help with someone else to do that is just so empowering. And then of course, healthy boundaries. Always.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, all the reasons that I talk about all these things, they just keep coming up in various different ways. But gentle accountability, is that the way you would describe that? Because I see that as the coaching goal. Like the difference between therapy and coaching is purely in the eye of the beholder, because I think sometimes I've heard a lot that I feel like a therapist to people. And I'm like, well, can you unschool therapy? Because I've done a lot of it.
Yeah. And there's so much, there's lots of therapy over here too. But therapy is like kind of a way to, and it depends on what kind of therapy you're doing. There's all kinds of therapy, but coaching, I consider coaching to be kind of like therapy, but then you're also sitting down and you're brainstorming with another person, because you're also solutions focused on the current thing, whereas more of a traditional or conventional therapeutic environment is more of, you're in a safe space here. I'm going to ask leading questions or reflective questions so you can move through this. I think they're both good. And they can be both very complementary to do together.
Just as an aside, someone, and I can barely see it because I'm that many years old, but am I recording it? Yes, I am. And it will be on my YouTube channel tomorrow. So my name is Teresa Wiedrich, by the way, at Homeschool Mama Self-Care. You'll find me on YouTube. I'll make sure that you have access to the link as well. And I think the fact that people are asking is probably a sign that we should do this again, have a conversation around this. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just saw someone who just said, and I think this is always important to bring up too, because I know that both of us work with new homeschooling parents, but we both work with seasoned homeschooling parents. And sometimes I'm working with a parent who has been homeschooling longer than me. And that's just simply showing that this is good maintenance. And no matter how long you've been homeschooling, if you find yourself in a place that you can't bust through, there's some stuck place, you're looking for breakthrough, find someone to help you, whether that's someone you use as a coach, or it's a friend, or it's a group, or it's a course, or whatever it is. It's so important to recognize that self, again, that signal, I see this, and it's an opportunity for me to make this change happen in my own life. And if I ignore it, it's just going to create more opportunities, aka a little more chaos.
Trouble.
So if you're feeling the urge, like, and I think that's it too, is like homeschool moms will spend all kinds of money on their kids, which is wonderful. We send them to all of the great experiences. We pay for the best curriculum. We pay for all these things, but we don't pay for things like life coaching for ourselves. And man, what actually would make a bigger difference for our children than a happy, healthy mom who loves homeschooling, who loves spending time with her children, and is not part of the mommy wine culture. Not that there's anything wrong with wine, but that's kind of, we don't need to be in this place of
what's the mom wine culture? Is that like, are you meaning like Prosecco, or do you?
Gosh, after a day with the kids, I have to have a drink, and I'm not saying I haven't been that mom, but that's again a signal that there is something, there's something going on that we need to begin addressing. And you can't change your kids, and you might have really difficult kids. I certainly do. I cannot guarantee the outcome for my children. I have to trust that I'm doing the very best that I can, and that it's enough. And they might bomb out really big. And some of them have, and some of them I'm sure will continue to do so. And I'm just going to walk with them. My love for them is unconditional. My support for them is unconditional. Do I condone their behavior? No. Do I understand it and accept it? Yes. And so that's huge to incorporate into this conversation is like, you and I are not sitting here saying that we are the perfect parent, the perfect homeschooler. We're in the trenches. But we've done a lot of work on ourselves.
And actually, I think that's the only place of control you've got.
Yeah.
You think it's in the other places, but like your education choices, exactly. It is not, it is you. And if that is a hard thing to consider, that you aren't fully able to know why you're doing everything you're doing or what you need or how to make it happen, well, girlfriend, you're not going to be able to do it with your kids.
Yeah.
You just can't. And so it really is here that we can influence the most. And just like you said, that growth, signing up for growth is actually, I would say, making all the really crappy things in life become compost for a healthier garden of your soul than it is to just resign yourself to the heap of garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's so beautiful that you just said that, because it's like the phoenix from the ashes, right? You and I both, along with, I'm sure, everyone that's watching this, we all have things that while we were going through them were just insufferable. And when you get some distance, you can see that silver lining. It doesn't have to be all bad and all good. Life is both all the time. And so it's about recognizing, navigating. It's about navigating the really difficult seasons and periods and personalities that are part of life. And we can't check out or avoid that. That's never the solution, especially when we're leading and guiding our children and they're watching everything we're doing.
Yeah, no pressure. It is always a pleasure to chat with you. I really do think we should do this on the regular. My goal here in the Homeschool Mom Chat is for us to like hang out at the water cooler. I can introduce you to other people that are serving in the homeschool community. That's my goal every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on Instagram. And then you'll find it recorded later in YouTube. And it was always a pleasure to hang out with you. And all the way into Florida, I want to be there with you. I've got a
we'd be outside in t-shirts right now, although I'm wearing a sweater. It's cold in here.
Well, I could too, because I'm Canadian, but there's snow outside, so I probably shouldn't be.
I just saw, thank you so much for this opportunity, Teresa. I wanted to read this comment because it touched me so much. I want to make sure we read it. This conversation is touching my soul, and now I'm crying. Thanks, ladies, for this lovely and hoping conversation. I feel so seen. So thank you for sharing that, being vulnerable with us. Vulnerability is the place where we start with growth, and you're in a safe place here. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here, and I wish you the best. Thank you so much, Teresa. This has been lovely. I love seeing your face and being with you this afternoon.
Yeah, I wish I could keep going. Okay, all the best. I hope everybody has a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.